I did it for years without thinking of it as a habit at all. After dinner, after the dishes, I would settle into my chair and turn on the television. Sometimes I moved to the bedroom and watched from there. The tablet came later, easier to hold, easier to scroll. News, a program I had been following, something familiar to close the evening with. I was not doing anything wrong. I was doing what most people do, what I had done for decades, and every morning the number on the meter was high. Not catastrophically high, not emergency room high, just stubbornly, inexplicably, consistently high. Higher than my dinner warranted, higher than my medication should have allowed, higher on mornings after careful evenings than it had any reason to be. I had been waking up to numbers between 150 and 170 for so long that I had started to think of it as my baseline, the number my body had settled into, the ceiling it had decided to live under. I was wrong about that. It was not a ceiling, it was a consequence, and the cause was something I was doing every single night in the 2 hours before I closed my eyes. I am 83 years old. I've been managing type 2 diabetes for nearly 2 decades, and I want to tell you that the number I wake up to now is not the number I woke up to for most of those years. I sleep differently. I wake up differently. The morning has a different quality to it, quieter, clearer, less freighted with what the meter is going to say. That shift did not come from a prescription change. It came from stopping something I had never thought to question. What I stopped is something you very likely do yourself, and the reason it matters for your fasting glucose is not obvious until you understand what it does to the specific hormonal process that governs your liver between 2 and 4 in the morning. Stay with me, because the connection between the screen you look at before bed and the number you wake up to is real. It is documented, and it is one of the last things anyone thinks to mention in a diabetes appointment. Here is the mechanism, all of it. Your body has an internal clock, a circadian rhythm that governs when hormones rise and fall across a 24-hour cycle. One of the most important hormones in that cycle, for anyone managing blood sugar, is cortisol. Cortisol begins rising in the early hours of the morning, roughly 2 to 4, as your body prepares for the day ahead. And when it rises, it signals your liver to release stored glucose into your bloodstream. Researchers have studied this process for decades. They call it the dawn phenomenon. In a healthy body with intact insulin sensitivity, the glucose that release produces is cleared efficiently. In a body where insulin resistance has developed over years, that glucose accumulates. And the morning number reflects how much accumulated before your alarm went off. The size of that cortisol spike, how early it starts, how high it climbs, how much glucose it tells your liver to release, is directly governed by the quality of your sleep the night before, specifically by how much time your body spends in deep, slow-wave sleep. The stage of sleep where the most restorative work happens, where growth hormone pulses, where the stress hormone system resets, where insulin sensitivity is partially restored for the following day. Research has shown that selectively reducing deep sleep, even while keeping total sleep time roughly the same, significantly reduces insulin sensitivity. The depth of sleep matters independently of the duration. You can spend 8 hours in bed and still wake up with a cortisol profile that looks like you barely slept if the deep stages were compromised. And here is where the screen comes in. Your eyes contain cells that are specifically sensitive to short wavelength blue light, the wavelength that dominates the light emitted by televisions, tablets, and phones. These cells send a signal to a small region of your brain that functions as the master clock for your circadian rhythm. When blue light reaches those cells in the evening, the clock reads it as daylight. It concludes that it is still afternoon, and it responds by suppressing melatonin, the hormone that initiates the cascade towards sleep. Research measuring melatonin levels in people exposed to screens in the evening found that even moderate exposure significantly delayed melatonin onset and reduced total melatonin production through the night. Without adequate melatonin, the brain does not signal the shift toward deep, slow-wave sleep at the right time. The architecture of the night changes. The deep stages arrive later, last less time, and in some cases are skipped almost entirely. The body spends more of the night in lighter sleep, easier to fragment, easier to interrupt, less restorative by every measure. And a night of lighter, more fragmented sleep means a cortisol curve that starts earlier and climbs higher. which means a liver that releases more glucose before dawn, which means a fasting number that reflects a hormonal event that was set in motion the moment you picked up the tablet after dinner. This is what nobody says in the appointment. Not because your doctor does not understand sleep physiology or cortisol or melatonin, they do. But connecting the TV in your bedroom to the number on your meter the next morning, tracing that specific chain in the 7 minutes available, does not happen. You leave with the prescription, you go home and turn on the evening program, and the number stays where it is. Subscribe, there is more of this coming. And drop your fasting number in the comments, just the number. You do everything right. You eat clean, you take your pills, and the next morning that number is still too high. I know that frustration. I lived it for years. They never tell you about the morning rise, your sugar climbing while you sleep, no matter what you did the day before. You wake up, you test, and it feels like the work didn't count, like you're stuck depending on more and getting nowhere. I was done feeling powerless. I didn't want to throw out my doctor's plan. I wanted something natural and simple I could add to it, something that finally moved that morning number. I'll walk you through what changed it for me, and the natural support I add every day is in the free presentation linked below. What I stopped was using any screen in the 2 hours before bed. No television after 9, no tablet in the bedroom, no phone scrolling in the dark. I put the devices in another room. The bedroom became a room without screens. That was the change. Nothing added, nothing purchased, something removed. The first week was uncomfortable in a way I had not expected. Not painful, just noticeably empty. The evening felt longer. I did not know what to do with the quiet. I read, I listened to the radio at low volume, I sat with a cup of something warm. The adjustment took about 10 days before the evenings stopped feeling like something was missing and started feeling like something had been returned. And the number began to move, not immediately, not dramatically in a single morning. Gradually, over 3 weeks, the readings that had been sitting between 150 and 170 began shifting downward, consistently. Not every morning, there were still variations, but the floor changed. The mornings that used to start at 155 now started at 135. The ones that had touched 170 stopped reaching it. By the end of the first month, I was waking to readings I had not seen in years. I had not changed my medication. I had not changed my diet. I had not added a supplement or altered my meal timing or done anything that required effort or cost. I had stopped looking at a screen after 9 o'clock. That was it. Now, the screen change is one part of a system, and I want to be honest with you about that, because the dawn phenomenon responds to several inputs simultaneously. The quality of your sleep is the one the screen addresses, but the baseline glucose you carry into sleep is a separate input, and it matters just as much. If you go to bed with blood sugar that is still elevated from dinner, your liver has more substrate to work with regardless of how well you sleep. A short walk after dinner, 10 minutes, slow, no particular effort, activates a glucose transporter in your muscle cells that pulls sugar out of your bloodstream independently of insulin. Movement clears the dinner glucose before your body settles toward rest. The liver starts the night with less to work with. And what you eat first in the morning shapes the entire glucose curve of the following day. Protein before anything else triggers a hormone that slows gastric emptying, suppresses the liver's glucose release, and primes the insulin response, flattening the spike from whatever comes after it and reducing the glucose load that cascades into the following night. The morning habit and the evening habit are two ends of the same system. Stop the screens 2 hours before sleep. Walk 10 minutes after dinner. Eat protein before anything else at breakfast. These 3 habits address the morning number from 3 different directions: the depth of sleep that controls the cortisol curve, the baseline glucose the liver finds at the start of the night, and the daytime curve that determines what that baseline will be. None of them costs anything. None requires a prescription. All 3 work on the mechanism, not around it. At 83, I sleep well. I wake up without the first thought being the meter. I make plans without the condition being the first thing I consult. I show up for the people I love without needing to arrange everything around what my blood sugar might do. That kind of ease, ordinary, unremarkable ease, is what this is actually about. Not a number. The life that number was making smaller. I want to tell you about a woman named Helen. 72 years old, retired school teacher from Ohio, 30 years in a classroom, 20 years managing type 2 diabetes. Her fasting readings had been between 145 and 165 for the better part of a decade. She took her medication faithfully, she watched what she ate. She was the kind of person who did not cut corners. When I asked about her evenings, she described what most people describe: dinner, then the television, news, then a program, then the tablet in bed. She fell asleep with it in her hand most nights, she said, because it was how she unwound. She had never connected it to anything medical. It was just how evenings ended. She stopped. 2 hours before bed, no screens. The television moved out of the bedroom. The tablet stayed in the kitchen after 8. She replaced the time with reading, and on warmer evenings, a short walk after dinner. Within 3 weeks, her fasting readings had begun shifting. The 160s became 140s. The 140s touched 125. By the end of 6 weeks, she was waking to numbers she described as almost unrecognizable, not because they were dramatic, but because she had not seen them in so long she had stopped expecting to. She told me what stayed with her was how simple it had been. Not easy in the beginning, but simple. She had not been asked to change what she ate or add a supplement or rearrange her life. She had been asked to turn off the television 2 hours earlier. And the number that had defined her mornings for a decade had finally, quietly moved. Helen is not a clinical case study. Her pattern is one I have seen replicated often enough that I no longer think of the evening screen as a minor variable. For someone managing blood sugar after 60, it is connected to the fasting number through a chain that is real and specific and almost never discussed. And it is one of the most available changes anyone can make because it costs nothing and it starts tonight. I want to say clearly, before we go further, everything in this video is designed to work alongside your doctor's care, not in place of it. If you are on medication, do not adjust anything without talking to your physician. Bring your numbers to your next appointment. Show them the trend. What I have described here is support for your treatment. The decisions about your prescription belong with the person who knows your full picture. Now I want you to sit with something for a moment. Think about how long the number has been where it is. The years of careful evenings that did not move it. The appointments that sent you home with adjustments that were not quite enough. The quiet accumulation of mornings that started with a reading instead of a breath. The exhaustion of managing something that managed you back. Think too about what that number has quietly cost, beyond the glucose, beyond the medication. The visits you kept shorter than you wanted because managing away from home felt complicated. The evenings with people you love where the condition was always somewhere in the room, taking up space that belonged to other things. The slow drift toward a smaller life, not from any single choice, but from the accumulated weight of a problem that never fully resolved. You were not failing. You were missing a piece. A specific, nameable, fixable piece. The light from a screen telling your brain it was still afternoon, suppressing the hormone that should have been carrying you into deep sleep, leaving your cortisol to rise too early and your liver to work too hard before dawn. That piece is available to you right now. The number that has been sitting where it is for months or years is not permanent. The sleep that changes it is still possible. The mornings that start differently are still ahead of you, and the people you want to be present for, without the condition running the agenda, are still there. If you watched this whole thing, you're not the type who gives up. You're the type who keeps looking for a real answer. So let me be straight with you. The morning number isn't your fault, and it isn't just diabetes. It's the dawn rise, and it responds to the right daily habits. The goal was never to quit your treatment. It was to support it naturally so you finally see that number move and feel in control again. Alongside the steps I showed you, I take a simple, natural support every day to help keep my blood sugar in a healthy range. Affordable, easy, and it works with my doctor's plan, not against it. The free presentation is in the description below. Go see it for yourself. And keep your doctor in the loop. This is support, not a replacement. Everything I have shared today is based on physiological and sleep research I have followed carefully for many years. It is not personal medical advice. If you have any condition that affects your sleep or your metabolism, speak with your doctor before making significant changes. And bring these ideas into that conversation, The best results I have ever seen come when good information and good medical care work together. The screen. Tonight, 2 hours before bed. That is where it stops. And that is where the number starts to move.